There is developing news at this hour concerning the Chandra Levy case. D.C. Police Chief Charles Ramsey has just confirmed that human remains found in Rock Creek Park this morning are that of the missing intern.
After 23 years, a shocking discovery changes everything about Chandra Levy. Sandra Levy's life was full of big dreams and bright promises. But as spring turned into summer in 2001, something scary was about to happen. Sandra suddenly stopped talking to her worried parents, who were scared something bad had happened. What if Sandra Levy's last meeting led to something dark and scary? Join us as we dive into the chilling story of her disappearance and the desperate search for the truth. How Sandra Levy's dream led to a national scandal. Born in 1977 to Robert and Susan Levy, Sandra grew up in Modesto, California. Her father was a cancer doctor, and she had a stable and supportive upbringing. Known for being smart and ambitious, she aimed for big things in life. But little did her loving parents know, the path Sandra had chosen would lead her into a web of secrets and danger, with consequences no one could have foreseen. Feeling limited by her small-town roots, Sandra went to San Francisco State University for a degree in journalism, then pursued public administration at the University of Southern California. An internship with the Los Angeles mayor's office led her to Washington, D.C., where she worked for the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Sandra found her time in D.C. exciting and fulfilling. She was passionate about the criminal justice system and dreamed of working in national security. Her supervisors quickly recognized her talents, especially in handling media during high-profile cases. As her final semester ended in April 2001, so did her internship. She planned to return to California in May to graduate and looked forward to the future, even considering a scenic train trip across the country, a long-held dream of hers. But then, something strange happened. She stopped communicating with her family. At first, her parents assumed she was just busy wrapping up her time in D.C. It wasn't like her to not return calls, and they thought it was odd she hadn't shared any details about her travel plans. Still, they tried not to worry too much, thinking they'd hear from her soon. But by the first week of May, with no word from Sandra, their worry grew. And that's when things took a turn for the worse. Chandra's disappearance deeply unsettled Susan Levy, and her worry grew. She feared that her daughter's connection to a congressman could have put her in danger. As days passed without hearing from Chandra, Susan and Robert Levy's desperation increased. They felt powerless and feared their daughter had become a victim due to her ties to such a powerful person. Determined to find answers, the Levys checked Chandra's phone records and discovered calls linked to Congressman Gary Condit. This discovery alarmed Susan, reminding her of a troubling conversation with Chandra about Condit. Chandra had been defensive, insisting she could handle things. But the memory only fueled Susan's fear. With no solid leads, the Levys turned to the media, hoping the public could help find Chandra. As the story spread, more details about her life and her relationship with Condit, a married man with a questionable past, came to light, deepening their distress. Meanwhile, Robert Levy, driven by a mix of frustration and determination, decided to confront Condit directly. He found Condit's contact information and reached out. However, he only managed to speak with Condit's wife, who told him that the congressman was unavailable. This brief interaction did nothing to ease the Levys' worries. Instead, it only strengthened their resolve to find out what happened to their daughter. As the investigation dragged on, the Levys were overwhelmed with grief but refused to give up hope. They worked closely with authorities, following every lead and staying in contact with detectives, driven by their love for her. Investigators focused on Gary Condit, uncovering troubling details about his personal life and connections with younger women, raising concerns about his involvement in her disappearance. Detectives dug into his phone records, checked alibis, and compared timelines with Sandra's last known activities, only complicating the case further. Investigators learned that Condit had asked a recent lover to lay low and avoid the spotlight right after Sandra's disappearance became known. This suspicious move only made the authorities more convinced that Condit was hiding something or trying to cover his tracks. Sandra's parents continued to demand answers, growing more worried with each passing day. The media coverage expanded, with national news outlets picking up the story, adding pressure on the police and on Condit. Tips and leads came pouring in, but so did rumors and speculation, making it harder to sort through what was real and useful. As the investigation gained momentum, detectives decided to take a closer look at Condit's apartment. They conducted a detailed search, hoping to find any evidence that might link him to Sandra's disappearance. Every corner was inspected for signs of Sandra or anything that might show a deeper connection than Condit had admitted. By the end of May, Sandra Levy's story had captivated the entire country. People everywhere, from everyday viewers to experts, were discussing what could have happened. Through all of this, Sandra's parents stayed at the heart of the media storm, holding on to hope that their daughter would be found alive. As detectives pressed on, the Levys prepared for both the worst and best outcomes. They endured the pain of not knowing what happened to their daughter, but held on to hope for justice and Sandra's return. The case was becoming more complicated, with hidden relationships and secrets slowly emerging. The Levys' battle for answers in Sandra's disappearance. The Levys, frustrated by the slow progress, rejected the idea that Sandra had run away or harmed herself. They believed her bright future made those theories impossible and pushed for a deeper investigation into Condit's involvement. As summer approached and the investigation dragged on, public interest in Sandra's case stayed strong. The Levys used this attention to give interviews and keep Sandra's story in the news, urging the police to intensify their efforts. They spoke about Sandra's ambitions and how unlikely it was for her to vanish without a trace. They also criticized the police for being slow to consider Condit as a suspect and pushed for an independent review, believing the investigation was incomplete. Meanwhile, the police continued analyzing evidence, awaiting DNA results from Sandra's apartment and examining her laptop, which showed she was preparing to return to California, raising questions about possible motives. As more information came out, the tension between the Levys and Condit grew. Sandra's friends began sharing details about her relationship with Condit, saying that it had been kept secret. Some said Sandra had been anxious and worried in the days leading up to her disappearance, though she hadn't explained exactly why. In a second interview with the police, Condit faced tougher questions about his relationship with Sandra. Detectives were looking for any signs that he was hiding something. Condit stuck to his story, insisting they were just friends, but the evidence started pointing to a deeper, more complicated connection between them. Then things took another turn. The Levys were contacted by several women who had also been involved with Condit. They all shared similar stories, charming at first, followed by secrecy and manipulation. These stories raised more alarms for the investigators, painting a picture of a man who was skilled at hiding the truth. Despite the growing exhaustion, the Levys didn't give up. They kept appearing on national TV, holding press conferences, and speaking to anyone who might help bring Sandra home. Each appearance was a mix of hope and heartbreak, as they pleaded for any clue or piece of information that could solve the mystery of Sandra's disappearance. The investigation into Sandra Levy's disappearance changed how the media and law enforcement approached missing person cases, especially when powerful people were involved. For the Levys, it was about never giving up, driven by their love for Sandra and their desperate need for answers. Gary Condit admitted that he and Sandra Levy had met in secret, usually at his apartment. He insisted that their relationship was completely consensual and that he never made Sandra do anything she wasn't comfortable with. Condit tried to present their relationship as respectful and mutual, but this didn't match what others close to Sandra were saying. For the Levys, this confession felt like too little, too late. They were upset that it had taken so much pressure from the media for Condit to admit what they had suspected all along. The worst part was that there was still no solid proof linking him directly to Sandra's disappearance, leaving them stuck in a painful and uncertain wait for answers. The investigators kept digging into Condit's timeline from around the time Sandra went missing. They looked through his phone records, credit card statements, and any meetings he had. Their goal was to figure out where he had been and if he could be connected to the place where Sandra's belongings had been found. Each clue was carefully checked, but the case remained complicated and the truth stayed out of reach. As more details of the case emerged, public interest only grew. The media coverage became relentless, sometimes making things harder for the investigators. False leads and rumors started spreading, slowing down the search for the truth. But on the bright side, the constant media attention kept the authorities from letting the case go cold. Months went by, and the police explored every possibility, even considering the idea that Sandra might have been attacked by someone random or a serial predator. But without solid evidence, these ideas were just guesses. The focus remained on Condit, whose statements seemed inconsistent, and the secretive nature of his relationship with Sandra raised suspicion. The Levys kept fighting for their daughter, organizing public vigils and speaking at events. They worked closely with law enforcement and made sure Sandra's story stayed alive. Their dedication was a constant reminder of the personal tragedy that lay behind all the media attention. As the investigation dragged on, Gary Condit's political career started to crumble. The ongoing scandal made it hard for him to keep up with his duties as a congressman. His reputation was badly damaged, and it became clear that his chances of re-election were slim. The affair and the way he handled the situation pushed away many of his supporters and colleagues. Then more women started coming forward, sharing their stories about Condit. They described a pattern of behavior similar to what Sandra's family had heard. These women talked about how Condit used charm and secrecy, which only added to the public's growing distrust of him and fueled further speculation about his involvement in Sandra's disappearance. But this wasn't just about Condit. The case of Sandra Levy became a turning point in how the media covered criminal investigations. It showed the complicated ways that politics, the media, and law enforcement can interact. The story gripped the nation and sparked conversations about privacy, the presumption of innocence, and how much media attention can affect justice. A man named Ingmar Guan eventually confessed to attacking and eliminating Sandra Levy while she was jogging in Rock Creek Park. At first, his confessions weren't taken too seriously, but as detectives continued to look into them, they became key pieces of evidence that helped put together the events that led to Sandra's tragic death. The pivotal clues in Sandra Levy's Rock Creek Park tragedy. With this renewed focus, and thanks to advancements in forensic science, detectives re-examined the evidence found in Rock Creek Park. They paid close attention to the damage to Sandra's hyoid bone, which indicated she had been strangled. This detail matched the stories told by Guan's acquaintances about his confessions. The pieces were starting to fall into place, suggesting that Guan wasn't just a possible suspect, he was likely the person responsible. As they dug deeper into Guan's past, they uncovered a history of violent behavior. He had a criminal record and was known to spend time in Rock Creek Park around the same time Sandra went missing. The fact that a photo of Sandra was found in his prison cell and that his alibi didn't hold up during the first investigations only made him look more suspicious. Eventually, Guan was arrested and charged with Sandra Levy's elimination. During the trial, prosecutors carefully laid out the evidence. They presented DNA traces, Guan's confessions, and the photo of Sandra that had been found. The defense tried to challenge the reliability of witness testimonies and suggested that DNA could have been contaminated. But the jury found the overall evidence convincing. In a dramatic end to a case that had dragged on for almost 10 years, Guan was found guilty of first-degree elimination. The verdict brought a bittersweet sense of relief to the Levy family. Although nothing could bring Sandra back, they finally had some closure and justice. After the trial, Gary Condit's connection to the case faded. The evidence cleared him of any direct involvement in Sandra's death, though many still questioned his earlier misleading statements and how he handled things. Condit's political career never recovered from the scandal, and he remained a controversial figure. Sandra Levy's case sparked conversations about safety in public spaces, how women are treated in the media, and the role of law enforcement in cases involving well-known public figures. It reminded everyone that even in seemingly safe places, danger can lurk, and justice requires persistence and time. Years later, Sandra Levy's case is still brought up in discussions about criminal justice reform. It highlights important issues like how evidence is handled and the way both suspects and victims are portrayed by the media. The case remains a powerful example of how complex criminal investigations can be and the lasting impact they have on everyone involved. Ingmar Guan, initially accused of eliminating Sandra Levy, had repeatedly confessed and recanted over the years. Despite a lack of direct physical evidence, prosecutors charged him in March 2009 with horrifying violence and robbery, though he maintained his innocence. The violent charge was dropped due to conflicting testimonies, including from Guan's former cellmate, who confirmed the horrible confession but not the assault. In October 2010, Guan was found guilty of the other charges and sentenced to 60 years in prison. Sandra's parents felt some closure and shifted their focus away from Gary Condit. In 2015, Guandique's defense team managed to get a motion for a new trial. This was largely because doubts had surfaced about the reliability of the prosecution's key witness, and there was new information that wasn't considered during the first trial. One major piece of evidence was a report of a neighbor hearing a terrifying scream near Sandra's apartment early on May 1st, before she was last active on her laptop. This lead had been missed earlier in the investigation. Even though the scream could have been a major clue, it was never definitively connected to Sandra's disappearance. Eventually, due to these complications and the inconsistencies in the case, the charges against Guandique were dropped, and the decision was made to deport him to El Salvador. This left Sandra's case unresolved once again. As the focus on Guandique faded, so did the suspicion around Congressman Gary Condit. However, the damage had already been done. Condit lost his bid for re-election and left politics. He moved to Arizona, where he tried to open 2 Baskin-Robbins franchises, a detail that many found ironic since Sandra's last known activity was buying ice cream. Unfortunately, his business venture failed, leading to financial and legal troubles. He later moved back to California and worked as a lobbyist. Despite the years that had passed and the ongoing public interest in the case, Condit continued to deny that he had any romantic involvement with Sandra, even though evidence suggested otherwise. The case, full of twists, legal challenges, and unanswered questions, remained a topic of public discussion. Sandra Levy's story serves as a reminder of how difficult and complex high-profile criminal cases can be. The case touched the lives of everyone involved and highlighted the many challenges in finding truth and justice, especially when so many details remain unresolved. Did Gary Condit truly have no role in Sandra Levy's disappearance? Or is there more to the story than we'll ever know? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe.